Jake Miller was having his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. He nearly dropped his mug as red lights flashed across the New Geneva Colony control room. The coffee was terrible anyway, but it was the only thing that helped him. Wake up on this boring frontier world. What now? Jake muttered, rushing to the main console. As the colony administrator, every emergency landed on his desk. Usually it was broken mining equipment or arguments between the workers. Lisa Kane, the security chief, was already at her station. Her fingers moved fast across the controls. We have a crash site about 2 miles north. Unknown vessel, small, maybe a scout ship. Jake felt his stomach drop. In 3 years running New Geneva Colony, they had never seen aliens. The mining world was too far from the main trade routes. Most days, Jake felt forgotten by the rest of human space. Any signs of life? Jake asked. Picking up one life sign. Weak but stable. Dr. Alex Ross looked up from his science station. The ship design doesn't match any known human vessels. This could be our first contact with an alien species. Jake's hands shook as he reached for the communication device. First contact protocols were something he had studied in school but never expected to use. Prep the medical bay. Lisa, take a team to the crash site. I'm coming with you. Sir, regulations say the administrator should stay in the colony during potential hostile situations, Lisa said. This isn't hostile, it's historic. Jake grabbed his jacket. Besides, who else? Here has first contact training? The ride to the crash site took 20 minutes in the colony's ground vehicle. Jake spent the time reviewing everything he remembered about alien contact procedures. Be respectful. Don't make assumptions. Try to establish peaceful communication. Most importantly, don't do anything that could start a war. The crashed ship was small and sleek, made of some kind of silver metal that seemed to shift color in the sunlight. Steam rose from several cracked sections. The design was unlike anything Jake had ever seen, with flowing lines that looked more grown than built. Life signs are coming from inside, Lisa reported, checking her scanner. Whatever's in there is still alive. They approached carefully. The ship's hull had cracked open near what looked like a door. Through the gap, Jake could see movement. Hello? Jake called out. We're here to help. A voice answered from inside the ship. It spoke in accented but clear English. I am alive. My ship is broken. I require assistance. Jake felt relief wash over him. At least they could communicate. We have medical help. Can you come out? Yes. I am coming out now. What emerged from the ship made Jake's breath catch. The alien was humanoid, but clearly not human. She stood about 5 feet tall with pale blue skin that had a slight shimmer. Her hair was white and moved like it was underwater. Large purple eyes dominated a face that was both beautiful and completely foreign. But what struck Jake most was how young she looked. If she had been human, he would have guessed she was maybe 16 or 17 years old. I am Zixara of the Velthari people, she said, standing straight despite obvious injuries. I thank you for your assistance. I'm Jake Miller, administrator of New Geneva Colony. This is Lisa Kane, our security chief. We have medical facilities that can help you. Zixara shook her head. I do not require medical assistance. My injuries are minor and will heal naturally. However, I do require communication with my people to arrange transport. Dr. Ross stepped forward with his medical scanner. I'd like to check your injuries anyway. Different species might have different ideas about what's serious. I said no, Zixara replied firmly. I am essentially an adult by my people's standards. I can make my own medical decisions. Jake noticed Lisa and Alex exchange glances. Something about the alien's behavior seemed off, but Jake couldn't put his finger on what. Of course, Jake said. We respect your autonomy. Would you like to come to our colony while we help you contact your people? Zixara considered this. That would be acceptable. But I must be clear about something. I am not a child to be supervised or protected. I am capable of making adult decisions and should be treated as such. The statement surprised Jake. Looking at her, his first instinct had been protective. She looked so young. But alien development might be completely different from human development. Absolutely, Jake said. You'll be treated as our guest and equal. During the trip back to the colony, Zixara asked many questions about human society. She seemed particularly interested in how humans handled authority and decision-making. Jake found himself impressed by her intelligence and thoughtful questions. Your people allow young leaders? She asked. Age isn't everything, Jake replied. We believe in judging people by their abilities and character, not just how old they are. Zixara's eyes brightened. This is a wise approach. My people are sometimes too concerned with traditional age hierarchies. At the colony, Jake assigned Zixara guest quarters and access to the communication array. She quickly established contact with her people and learned that a rescue ship would arrive in several days. Over those days, Zixara proved herself remarkably capable. She helped solve a complex engineering problem in the mining operation. She mediated a dispute between two work crews. She even assisted Dr. Ross with some scientific research, showing deep knowledge of advanced physics. Lisa remained suspicious. Something's not right, Jake. She acts mature, but there are moments when she seems like a kid playing adult. You're being prejudiced because of how she looks, Jake replied. She's clearly intelligent and capable. We need to judge her by her actions, not our assumptions. Alex agreed with Lisa. Her knowledge is impressive, but sometimes she lacks practical wisdom. Yesterday she suggested solving our power shortage by overloading the reactor core. Technically possible, but incredibly dangerous. Jake dismissed their concerns. Zixara had earned his respect through her contributions to the colony. When other colonists expressed doubts, Jake defended her strongly. This is exactly the kind of thinking that holds back progress, Jake told the Colony Council. We can't let prejudice about age or appearance cloud our judgment. Zixara has proven herself over and over. When the Velthari rescue ship arrived, Zixara seemed genuinely sad to leave. I have enjoyed my time with humans, she told Jake. You have shown me respect that my own people sometimes do not. You've earned that respect, Jake replied. I hope this marks the beginning of good relations between our peoples. Zixara smiled. I believe it will. I will tell my people about human wisdom in treating individuals by their merit rather than arbitrary age restrictions. As Jake watched the alien ship disappear into space, he felt proud. He had handled humanity's first contact with the Velthari perfectly. He had shown that humans could be progressive and respectful of other cultures. He had no idea that his decision would change everything. 2 years had passed since Zixara left New Geneva Colony, and Jake Miller's life had changed completely. He now sat in a much larger office on the regional capital world of Harmony Station. The nameplate on his desk read, Regional Alien Affairs, Coordinator, a title that still felt surreal. Jake's successful first contact with the Velthari had made him famous throughout human space. His approach of treating young aliens as adults had become standard protocol. Military academies taught, his methods. Diplomats studied his techniques. Jake had even written a book called Respect Across the Stars that became required reading for anyone dealing with alien species. "Mr. Miller, Dr. Amy Chen is here to see you," his assistant announced through the intercom. Jake looked up from his reports. He didn't recognize the name, but his schedule showed an appointment. "Send her in." Dr. Chen was a small woman with tired eyes and graying hair. She carried a thick folder of papers and looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Miller. I'm a xenopsychologist specializing in alien development patterns. I've been studying the effects of your first contact protocols." Jake smiled. "I hope you found them effective. We've had great success applying them across multiple species." Dr. Chen didn't smile back. "That's what I need to discuss with you. We have a problem, a big one." She opened her folder and spread papers across Jake's desk. The documents showed reports from colonies across human space, all involving young Velthari aliens. In the past 2 years, over 300 young Velthari have visited human colonies, Dr. Chen began. "Following your protocols, they've all been treated as adults with full privileges and responsibilities." "Exactly as they should be," Jake said. Zixara made it clear that age discrimination was holding back her people. "But look at these incident reports." Dr. Chen pointed to specific documents. Young Velthari forming gangs on Titan Station. A group of them starting a fight that damaged half a spaceport on New Mars. 3 different colonies reporting theft and vandalism by Velthari youth. Jake frowned. These must be isolated incidents. The vast majority of contacts have been peaceful. "Mr. Miller, these young Velthari are exhibiting behavior patterns identical to human teenagers. Rebellion, risk-taking, poor decision-making. But they're being given adult-level freedom and resources." "You're making assumptions based on human development," Jake protested. "Zixara herself told me she was essentially an adult." Dr. Chen pulled out another document. "I've been corresponding with Velthari researchers. Do you know how long a Velthari individual lives?" Jake shrugged. Zixara mentioned they were long-lived, but she didn't give specifics. "Average lifespan, 400 years. Their adolescence lasts from age 30 to 100. Zixara was 47 when you met her. In human terms, she was about 14 years old." Jake felt his stomach drop. "That's impossible. She was intelligent, capable, mature." "Intelligent, yes. Velthari develop intellectual abilities early. But emotional and social maturity follows the same slow timeline as their physical development. You treated a highly intelligent teenager as a full adult." Jake stared at the reports spread across his desk. Pictures showed young Velthari engaged in various activities on human colonies. Now that he looked closer, he could see it. Despite their alien features, their body language was unmistakably youthful. The way they stood, moved, interacted with each other. "But the protocols have been successful," Jake said weakly. "We've established good relations with the Velthari government." "Have we?" Dr. Chen pulled out more papers. "These are communications from the Velthari Elder Council. They're calling the situation a corruption of their youth by human influence. Apparently, Zixara has become the leader of a movement among young Velthari demanding adult rights and freedoms." Jake read the translated documents. The formal language couldn't hide the Velthari elders' anger and concern. They described a generation of their youth who refused to follow traditional development paths, who demanded immediate adult status based on human teachings. "Zixara has become something of a celebrity among young Velthari," Dr. Chen continued. She speaks at gatherings, telling them about human respect for individual merit over age. She's inspiring massive generational conflict in their society. Maybe that's not entirely bad, Jake said, though his confidence was shaking. Sometimes old systems need to be challenged. Mr. Miller, imagine if aliens came to Earth and convinced all our teenagers that they deserved full adult rights immediately. No gradual increase in responsibility, no time to develop wisdom and judgment. Just full adult status at age 14 because they're intellectually capable. The comparison hit Jake like a physical blow. He thought about his own teenage years, about the stupid decisions he'd made despite being intelligent. The mistakes that had taught him important lessons, but could have been catastrophic if he'd had real adult power and freedom. "What do you recommend?" Jake asked quietly. "We need to revise the protocols immediately. Age and development stages matter, even for alien species. We need to establish proper procedures for determining actual maturity levels, not just intellectual capability." Jake's intercom buzzed. "Mr. Miller, there's an urgent message from New Geneva Colony. Administrator Kane says it's about the Velthari situation." Jake felt his blood chill. Lisa Kane had taken over as administrator when he was promoted. If she was calling about Velthari issues, it couldn't be good news. He activated the communication link. Lisa's face appeared on his screen and she looked stressed. "Jake, we have a problem. Zixara is back, and she's not alone. She's brought about 20 other young Velthari with her. They're calling themselves the Free Generation and demanding to establish a permanent settlement here." "That doesn't sound too bad," Jake said, though his stomach was already churning. "Jake, they're not asking for permission. They're demanding it as their right. They say human colonies are the only places where young Velthari can be treated with proper respect. They've also taken over our communication array and are broadcasting messages to other young Velthari across space." Dr. Chen looked at Jake, with an expression that said, "I told you so," without words. "They're also making modifications to their ships and equipment," Lisa continued. "Our engineer says the changes are technically brilliant but potentially dangerous. When I tried to discuss safety protocols with them, Zixara told me that suggesting restrictions was age discrimination and against human principles." Jake closed his eyes. The success story he had built his career on was crumbling around him. The protocols he had developed with the best intentions were causing chaos across human space and creating generational conflict in an alien society. "Lisa, keep them comfortable, but don't agree to anything permanent yet. I'm coming back to New Geneva immediately." After ending the call, Jake looked at Dr. Chen. "How bad is this going to get?" "That depends on how quickly we can fix it," she replied. "But Mr. Miller, you need to understand something. The young Velthari don't see this as a mistake. They see it as liberation. Convincing them to accept restrictions now will be much harder than it would have been originally." Jake gathered the reports and files. His career, his reputation, his pride in progressive alien relations, all of it was built on a fundamental misunderstanding. He had treated an alien teenager like an adult and accidentally started a generational revolution. As he prepared to leave for New Geneva Colony, Jake realized that his real first contact experience was just beginning. This time, he would have to learn the difference between intelligence and wisdom, between respect and responsibility, and he would have to figure out how to fix a problem that had spread across the galaxy. Jake Miller stepped off the transport ship at New Geneva Colony, feeling like he was returning to the scene of a crime. The familiar mining world looked the same, but everything felt different now. He knew that his decisions here 2 years ago had started a chain reaction across the galaxy. Lisa Kane met him at the landing pad. Her expression was grim. "They're in conference room 2. Zixara insisted on meeting in our official space rather than the guest quarters. How many are there now? Jake asked as they walked toward the administration building. 23 young Velthari. More ships arrive every few days. They've set up what they call a coordination center for something they're calling the Free Generation Movement. Jake felt his stomach twist. What exactly are they coordinating? That's what worries me. They're in constant communication with young Velthari across human space and apparently back on their homeworld, too. They're organizing protests, making demands, and spreading their message about liberation from age-based authority. As they entered the building, Jake could hear voices coming from the conference room. The tone was excited, energetic, and very young despite the formal words being used. Lisa paused outside the door. Jake, there's something else you need to know. They're not just talking anymore. Yesterday, they took over the main mining operation for 6 hours to demonstrate proper resource allocation techniques. No one was hurt, but they disrupted the entire production schedule. Did they do any damage? Actually, their techniques increased efficiency by 15%. But that's not the point. They didn't ask permission or coordinate with anyone. They just took control because they believed they knew better. Jake took a deep breath and opened the conference room door. Zixara stood at the head of a large table surrounded by other young Velthari. She had grown taller in the past 2 years, and her features had matured slightly, but she still looked unmistakably youthful when she saw Jake. Her face lit up with genuine pleasure. Jake Miller, my human mentor and friend. She moved quickly around the table to greet him. I am so pleased you have come to witness what we have accomplished. Hello, Zixara. It's good to see you again. Jake tried to keep his voice neutral. I understand you've brought some friends. These are my fellow members of the Free Generation. We are young Velthari who have embraced human principles of individual worth over arbitrary age restrictions. She gestured to the others, who all stood respectfully. Jake noticed something immediately. Despite their respectful posture, there was an energy in the room that reminded him of excited teenagers planning something their parents wouldn't approve of. We have come to New Geneva because this is where I first learned about true freedom, Zixara continued. This colony will serve as our headquarters for spreading liberation throughout Velthari society. Zixara, we need to talk about this. You can't just establish a headquarters without coordination with colony administration. Her expression changed, becoming more formal and cold. Are you suggesting that we do not have the right to peaceful assembly and self-determination? These are fundamental human principles that you taught me? Jake felt Dr. Chen's warnings echoing in his mind. Of course you have rights, but rights come with responsibilities. Setting up operations that affect colony resources and safety requires coordination. But we are not affecting safety. We are improving efficiency. One of the other young Velthari spoke up. Our analysis of your mining operations showed 17 areas for improvement. We implemented the most obvious corrections. Without asking permission, Lisa interjected. Permission from whom? Zixara asked. We are adults capable of making informed decisions. The improvements we made benefited everyone. Why should we need permission to do good? Jake realized he was seeing the logical conclusion of his own teachings. He had told Zixara that humans judged people by merit rather than age. He had treated her as an equal. Now she was applying those lessons in ways he had never intended. Because actions affect other people, Jake said carefully. Even good intentions can cause problems if they're not coordinated with others who might be affected. But that is exactly the kind of patronizing attitude that holds back progress, another young Velthari said. You are suggesting we need supervision, which contradicts the respect for individual capability that you showed Zixara. Jake sat down heavily. Zixara, can we speak privately? She considered this, then nodded. Very well, but I want you to understand that I am here by choice, representing the will of thousands of young Velthari who seek freedom from outdated restrictions. After the others left, Jake and Zixara sat alone in the conference room. Up close, Jake could see the intelligence in her eyes, but also something else, a kind of restless energy that reminded him powerfully of human teenagers. Zixara, I need to ask you something directly. When you told me you were essentially an adult, did you mean that you had completed all the normal development stages of your species? She hesitated for the first time since he had arrived. I meant that I was intellectually capable of adult reasoning. But emotionally and socially? Those are artificial distinctions used to maintain power structures, she said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. Are they? When I was your intellectual equal as a teenager, I still made terrible decisions because I lacked experience and emotional maturity. Intelligence isn't the same as wisdom. Zixara stood up abruptly. You are trying to take back what you gave me. You showed me respect and treated me as an equal. Now that it has led to changes you did not expect, you want to call it a mistake. I'm not trying to take anything back. I'm trying to understand the consequences of my actions. The consequences are freedom for thousands of young Velthari who were trapped by arbitrary age hierarchies. The consequences are progress and liberation from outdated traditions. Jake's communication device buzzed with an urgent message. He glanced at it and felt his blood run cold. What is it? Zixara asked, noticing his expression. Captain Ben Turner of the UCS Liberty is requesting immediate communication. He's in orbit with a Velthari diplomatic vessel. Jake activated the communication link. Captain Turner's face appeared on the screen, and he looked extremely serious. Mr. Miller, we have a situation. The Velthari Elder Council has sent a diplomatic mission. They're demanding immediate discussion about what they call the corruption of their youth by human influence. They want you to help them reclaim their young people. Zixara's face went pale. They cannot force us to return. We have done nothing wrong. They're also threatening to reconsider all agreements with human colonies if this situation isn't resolved, Turner continued. The economic implications alone could affect millions of humans. Jake felt the weight of the crisis settling on his shoulders. On one side were young aliens who genuinely believed they were fighting for freedom and dignity. On the other side were their elders who saw their society being torn apart by outside influence. Captain requests that the Velthari delegation come to the surface for discussions. We need to find a solution that respects everyone involved. After ending the communication, Jake looked at Zixara. She was staring out the window at the sky where her people's ships waited. They will try to force us to return to the old ways, she said quietly. They will say we are too young to understand what we are doing. Maybe the question isn't whether you're too young, Jake said gently. Maybe the question is whether there's a way to grow into adulthood that honors both your capabilities and your need for experience. Zixara turned back to him, and for a moment, Jake saw uncertainty in her eyes. What if I have made mistakes? What if my actions have caused harm I did not intend? It was the first time she had expressed doubt, and Jake realized it might be the first sign of the wisdom that came with real maturity. Then we figure out how to fix them together, he said. That's what adults do. The Velthari Elder Council delegation arrived at New Geneva Colony in a ship that dwarfed everything else in orbit. Jake watched from the observation deck as the massive vessel descended, its ancient hull scarred from centuries of travel between stars. "I have never seen my people's leadership in person," Zixara said quietly beside him. She had insisted on being present for the negotiations, despite Jake's suggestion that she might want to avoid the confrontation. "Are you nervous?" Jake asked. "I am uncertain. For 2 years I have been sure that I was fighting for what was right. But seeing their ship reminds me how young I am compared to them." 3 Velthari elders emerged from their vessel. They moved with slow dignity, their ancient features bearing the weight of centuries. Their leader, who introduced himself as Elder Kethmorn, looked at the assembled young Velthari with an expression that mixed disappointment with deep concern. The negotiations took place in the colony's main conference hall. Jake sat between the elders and the young Velthari, feeling like he was mediating a family dispute that could destroy interstellar relations. Elder Kethmorn spoke first, his voice carrying the authority of ages. "Human Miller, your people have caused great damage to our society. Our youth have abandoned traditional development paths. They refuse guidance from their elders. They demand privileges they have not earned through proper maturation. With respect—" "Elder," Zixara interrupted, "we demand only the same respect that humans show based on individual merit rather than arbitrary age requirements." "Arbitrary?" Elder Kethmorn's voice rose slightly. "Child, our development traditions have guided our people for thousands of years. They exist because young minds, no matter how intelligent, lack the wisdom that comes only with experience." Jake tried to mediate. "Perhaps both perspectives have merit. The young Velthari have shown remarkable capabilities, but there may be wisdom in gradual responsibility increases." "You speak of compromise," another elder said, "but the damage is already done. Our young people have been taught to reject our guidance entirely. They follow this child," he gestured at Zixara, "because she tells them what they want to hear." "I tell them the truth," Zixara said, her voice growing stronger. "That intelligence and capability matter more than age. That individuals should be judged by their actions, not their birth date." "And what actions have you taken?" Elder Kethmorn asked. "Have you built cities, raised children, led your people through crisis? Or have you simply enjoyed the freedom that others' sacrifice and wisdom have provided?" For the first time since the negotiations began, Zixara was silent. Jake's communication device interrupted the tense moment. "Mr. Miller, this is Maria Santos, in engineering. We have an emergency." "Can it wait?" Jake asked. "Sir, the young Velthari have been modifying equipment without authorization. One of their improvements to the reactor cooling system just caused a massive power surge. We're looking at a potential cascade failure that could take out half the colony's infrastructure." Jake felt ice in his veins. "Are we in immediate danger?" "We're working on it, but their modifications are incredibly complex. It's like they upgraded our technology by 50 years, but didn't consider how it would interact with existing systems." Elder Kethmorn was listening to the conversation. "This is exactly what we feared. Great intelligence applied without wisdom or proper oversight." Zixara stood up abruptly. "I will fix this. It was my people who caused the problem." "Absolutely not," Jake said. "You're not trained on our systems." "But I understand the principles behind their modifications better than your engineers," Zixara insisted. "And it was my movement that encouraged them to act without coordination. Elder Cathmorn looked at her with something that might have been approval. At least you accept responsibility. That is the beginning of wisdom. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Zixara worked alongside Maria Santos and the colony's engineering team, while Jake coordinated with the rest of the young Velthari to understand exactly what modifications had been made. What they discovered was both impressive and terrifying. The young Velthari had essentially redesigned the colony's entire power distribution system during their brief takeover of the mining operation. Their improvements were brilliant and would have increased efficiency dramatically, but they hadn't. Tested how the new systems would interact with older equipment. It's like they upgraded the heart but forgot about the rest of the circulatory system, Maria explained to Jake. The new systems are producing more power than the old conduits can handle. Zixara worked feverishly to create a solution, her young face intense with concentration. Jake watched her and realized something important. She was desperately trying to fix her mistake, but she was also learning from it in real time. I need to reroute power through secondary systems, she announced, but I cannot do it alone. I need guidance from someone who understands how all these systems work together. Elder Cathmorn had been observing silently. Now he stepped forward. Young one, are you asking for help from your elders? Zixara looked up at him, and Jake saw her struggle with pride and necessity. I am asking for wisdom to complement my knowledge. The elder moved to the control panel. Then let us work together. What followed was remarkable. Elder Cathmorn's deep understanding of system integration combined with Zixara's innovative thinking to create a solution that neither could have achieved alone. They worked side by side, the ancient Velthari guiding the young one through the complex process of safely implementing advanced modifications. When the crisis was finally resolved, Zixara collapsed into a chair. She looked exhausted, but also changed somehow. I nearly destroyed this colony, she said quietly. My people nearly caused catastrophic damage because we acted without proper coordination or oversight. But you also saved it, Jake pointed out. Your willingness to take responsibility and ask for help made the solution possible. Elder Cathmorn studied Zixara carefully. Child, what have you learned from this experience? That intelligence, without wisdom, is dangerous. That innovation without integration can cause more harm than good. That may be... She paused, struggling with the words. Maybe there are reasons for traditional development paths beyond simple age discrimination. And what do you believe should happen now? The elder asked. Zixara looked around the room at her fellow young Velthari, then at Jake, then at the elders. I think we need to find a new way. Not the old system that ignores our capabilities, but not the complete freedom I demanded either. Something that lets us grow into real adulthood instead of just claiming it. Jake felt a surge of hope. What would that look like? I do not know, Zixara admitted. But I think it requires both young and old working together to figure it out. Elder. Cathmorn nodded slowly. This is wisdom, young one. The recognition that some problems cannot be solved by intelligence alone, and that true adulthood includes knowing when to seek guidance. But even as Jake felt relieved by this breakthrough, his communication device buzzed with another urgent message. Captain Turner's voice came through clearly. Mr. Miller, we have a new problem. Korthani Empire ships are approaching the system. They're demanding an explanation for what they call human disruption of proper galactic order. And, sir, they're armed. Jake realized that their crisis had just expanded from interspecies relations to potential interstellar conflict. The young Velthari's revolution hadn't just affected their own people. It had caught the attention of the galaxy's most rigid and militaristic civilization. The consequences of his original mistake were still cascading outward, and Jake wasn't sure they could be contained. The Korthani Empire ships hung in space like dark metal predators. Jake watched them through the observation deck windows while trying to control his panic. The Korthani were known throughout the galaxy as rigid enforcers of what they called proper order. Their arrival meant the crisis had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. "The Korthani commander is requesting immediate communication," Captain Turner reported from orbit. "She says this system has become a source of galactic instability that requires correction." Elder Kethmorn stood beside Jake, his ancient face grave. The Korthani fear change above all else. "Your young Velthari revolution has spread beyond our species. Other young aliens across the galaxy are demanding similar freedoms. The Korthani see this as a threat to all established order." Zixara joined them at the window. She looked different now, more subdued but also more thoughtful. The crisis with the power systems had changed her in ways Jake was still trying to understand. "This is my fault," she said quietly. "I wanted to liberate young people everywhere, but I never considered that not all change is good change." "The fault is shared," Jake replied. "I started this by treating you as an adult without understanding what that really meant." The communication system crackled to life. The face that appeared on screen was unmistakably Korthani, pale gray skin, sharp features, and eyes like chips of ice. She wore the uniform of a high-ranking military commander. "I am Commander Vextar of the Korthani Order Fleet. This system has become a source of chaos that threatens galactic stability. Young members of multiple species are abandoning proper development protocols because of influences originating here." Jake stepped forward. "Commander, we're working to resolve the situation through diplomatic discussion." "Discussion?" Commander Vextar's voice was cold. "Chaos cannot be negotiated with. It must be eliminated. We have reports of young Korthani abandoning their training academies, demanding immediate adult status based on human principles. This infection must be stopped." Elder Kethmorn activated his own communication device. "Commander Vextar, I am Elder Kethmorn of the Velthari Council. We are working with the humans to find a solution that honors both individual development and social stability." "Solutions take time, Elder. Chaos spreads quickly. Already, 17 species report similar youth movements. The Galactic Commerce Guild is demanding action before trade routes are disrupted by unpredictable young leaders making impulsive decisions." Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. His simple mistake with first contact protocols had somehow triggered a galaxy-wide generational crisis. "What are you proposing, Commander?" Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Complete isolation of this system until the infection is contained. No ships in or out. No communications beyond this system. The chaos will burn itself out without fuel to spread." "That would be collective punishment for thousands of innocent people," Jake protested. "Better than allowing chaos to consume civilized space." Zixara suddenly stepped forward. "Commander Vexitar, I am Zixara, leader of what you call the infection. May I propose an alternative?" The Korthani commander studied her with obvious disdain. "You are a child playing at leadership. Why should the Korthani Empire listen to anything you say?" "Because I have something you want. The ability to reach all the young people who are following my example. I can end this crisis, but not through force or isolation. Jake looked at Zixara in surprise. What are you thinking? I am thinking that real leadership means taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions, even when those consequences spread far beyond what you intended. Zixara activated her own communication system and began broadcasting on frequencies that Jake knew reached young Velthari across the galaxy. My fellow members of the Free Generation, this is Zixara. I am speaking to you from New Geneva Colony, where our movement began. I have an important message about what we have learned. Jake watched as responses came in from dozens of locations. Young Velthari faces appeared on screens around the room, all eager to hear from their leader. For 2 years, I have taught you that age-based restrictions are wrong, that we should demand immediate adult treatment based on our intelligence and capabilities. I believed this with all my heart, and I convinced many of you to believe it, too. The faces on the screens began to look confused and concerned. But I have learned something important. Intelligence is not the same as wisdom. Capability is not the same as responsibility. And demanding rights without understanding their consequences is not liberation. It is selfishness. Zixara, what are you saying? One of the young Velthari asked from a distant colony. I am saying that I was wrong. Not about our capabilities. We are intelligent and capable. But I was wrong to think that made us ready for unlimited adult freedoms without proper preparation. Jake saw Elder Kethmore nod approvingly. Today, my actions nearly destroyed a human colony. My demand for freedom without responsibility put thousands of lives at risk. This is not the liberation I wanted for us. This is dangerous chaos. Responses from across the galaxy were immediate and emotional. Some young Velthari argued with her, others expressed confusion, and a few seemed relieved. What are you asking us to do? Another voice called out. I am asking you to return to your families and communities, but not to submit to the old ways completely. I am asking you to work with your elders to create new ways, paths that honor our capabilities while recognizing our need for guidance and gradual growth. Zixara looked directly into the camera. Real adulthood is not about having rights without restrictions. It is about having the wisdom to use freedom responsibly. And wisdom comes from experience, from making mistakes and learning from them, from accepting guidance from those who have walked the path before us. Commander Vextar had been listening to the broadcast. Pretty words, child, but words do not undo chaos. Then let me show you actions, Zixara replied. I will return to Velthari space and submit to traditional development protocols. I will work with the Elder Council to create new programs that give young people opportunities to earn greater freedom gradually through demonstrated responsibility. And the other species? The commander asked. Your message has spread beyond the Velthari. Jake stepped forward. We'll develop new first contact protocols, ones that take into account species-specific development patterns. We'll work with all affected species to create gradual integration programs instead of immediate adult treatment. The humans will also establish a new interspecies development institute, Elder Kethmorn added. Young members of any species can come there to learn responsibility alongside freedom, guided by both human and elder members of their own species. Commander Vextar considered this for a long moment. You propose to fix chaos with more interaction, not less. We propose to fix mistakes with learning, not punishment, Jake said. Isolation won't teach anyone anything, but working together might prevent future crises. The Korthani commander was silent for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. The Korthani, Empire will monitor this solution. If chaos continues to spread, we will take more direct action. But your proposal has merit. Order maintained through understanding is more stable than order maintained through force. After the communication ended, Zixara sat down heavily. I have just asked my followers to give up everything I taught them to want. No, Elder Kethmorn said gently. You have asked them to want something better, not just freedom, but the wisdom to use it well. Jake looked at Zixara and saw not the confident young alien who had demanded adult treatment, but someone who was actually beginning the real journey toward maturity. What happens now? Jake asked. Now we do the hard work, Zixara replied. We build something new, something that honors both young and old, both capability and wisdom. And we hope that other young people across the galaxy will choose growth over rebellion. 6 months later, Jake stood in the same observation deck, watching as the first group of young aliens arrived at the new Interspecies Development Institute. They came from dozens of species, all eager to learn how to bridge the gap between intelligence and wisdom, between capability and responsibility. Zixara was there to greet them, but not as their leader. She wore the robes of a student teacher, someone who was learning while helping others learn. She had completed the first phase of the new development program, one that honored both human ideas about individual merit and traditional ideas about gradual growth. Do you think it will work? Lisa Kane asked, joining Jake at the window. I think it's better than what we had before, Jake replied. And Zixara taught me something important. Real adulthood isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to admit when you're wrong and work to fix your mistakes. As Jake watched the young aliens begin their first day of classes, he reflected on how much had changed since that first crash landing. He had learned that respect for other cultures meant understanding their development processes, not imposing human concepts. He had learned that intelligence without wisdom could be dangerous, and that true leadership meant taking responsibility for unintended consequences. Most importantly, he had learned that growing up, for any species, was much harder and more important than he had ever realized.